It's 1976. The sky is low and full of clouds. The gray clouds are bulbous and wrinkled and shiny. The sky looks cerebral. Under the sky is a field, in the wind. A pale highway runs beside the field. Lots of cars go by. One of the cars stops by the side of the highway. Two small children are brought out of the car by a young woman with a loose face. A man at the wheel of the car stares straight ahead. The children are silent and have very white skin. The woman carries a grocery bag full of something heavy. Her face hangs loose over the bag. She brings the bag and the white children to a wooden fence post by the field, by the highway. The children's hands, which are small, are placed on the wooden post. The woman tells the children to touch the post until the car returns. She gets in the car and the car leaves. There's a cow in the field near the fence. The children touch the post. The wind blows. Lots of cars go by. They stay that way all day. In 1970, a woman with hair like fire sits several rows from a movie theater's screen. A child in a dress sits beside her. A cartoon has begun. The child's eyes enter the cartoon. Behind the woman is darkness. A man sits behind the woman. He leans forward. His hands enter the woman's hair. He plays with the woman's hair in the darkness. The cartoon's reflected light makes faces in the audience flicker. The woman's eyes are bright with fear. She sits absolutely still. The man plays with her red hair. The child does not look over at the woman. The theater's cartoons, previews of coming attractions, and feature presentation last almost 3 hours. Alex Trebek goes around the Jeopardy studio wearing a button that says, Pat Sajak looks like a badger. He and Sajak play racquetball every Thursday. It's 1986. California's night sky hangs bright and silent as an empty palace. Little white sequins make slow lines on streets far away under Fay's warm apartment. Fay Goddard and Julie Smith lie in Fay's bed. They take turns lying on each other. They have sex. Fay's cries ring out like money against her penthouse apartment's walls of glass. Fay and Julie cool each other down with wet towels. They stand naked at a glass wall and look at Los Angeles. Little bits of Los Angeles wink on and off as light gets in the way of other light. Julie and Fay lie in bed as lovers. They compliment each other's bodies. They complain against the brevity of the night. They examine and re-examine with a sort of unhappy enthusiasm. The little ignorances that necessarily, Julie says, line the path to any real connection between persons. Fay says she had liked Julie long before she knew that Julie liked her. They go together to the OED to examine the entry for the word like. They hold each other. Julie is very white, her hair prickly short. The room's darkness is pocked with little bits of Los Angeles at night through glass. The dark drifts down around them and fits like a gardener's glove. It is incredibly romantic. On March 12th, 1988, it rains. Fay Goddard watches the freeway outside her mother's office window first darken and then shine with rain. Dee Goddard sits on the ledge of her desk in stocking feet and looks out the window, too. Jeopardy's director stands with the show's public relations coordinator. The key grip and cue card lady huddle over some notes. Alex Trebek sits alone near the door in a canvas director's chair, drinking a can of soda. The room is reflected in the dark window. We need to know what you told her so we can know whether she'll come, Dee says. What we have here, Fay, is a 20 minutes tops type of thing, says the director, looking at the watch on the underside of her wrist. Then we're going to be in for at least another hour's setup and studio time. Or we're short a slot, meaning satellite and mailing overruns. Not to mention a boy who's half catatonic with terror and general neurosis right this very minute. Muffy DeMont, the PR coordinator, says softly. Last I saw, he was fetal on the floor outside makeup. Fay closes her eyes. My husband is watching him, says the director. Thank you ever so much, Janet, Dee Goddard says to the director. She looks down at her clipboard. All the others for the 4 slots are here? Everybody who's signed up. Most we've ever had. Plus a rather scary retired WAC who's not even tentatively slotted till late April. Says she can't wait any longer to get at Julie. But no Julie, says Muffy DeMont. Dee squints at her clipboard. So how many is that altogether, then? 9, Fay says softly. She feels at the sides of her hair. We got 9, says the director. Enough for at least the full 4 slots with a turnaround of 2 per slot. The rain on the aluminum roof of the Merv Griffin Enterprises building makes a sound in this room, like the frying of distant meat. And I'm sure they're primed, Fay says. She looks at the backs of her hands in her lap. What, with Janet assuming the poor kid will bump her? Your new mystery data guru. Don't confuse the difference between me, on one hand, and what I'm told to do, says the director. He won't bump her, the key grip says, shaking her head. She's chewing gum, stimulating a little worm of muscle at her temple. Alex Trebek, looking at his digital watch, begins his pre-slot throat clearing, a ritual Everyone in the room looks at him. Dee says, Alex, perhaps you'd put the new contestants in the booth for now. Tell them we may or may not be experiencing a slight delay. Thank them for the patience. Alex rises, straightens his tie. His soda can rings out against the metal bottom of a wastebasket. He clears his throat. A good host and all that. Dee smiles kindly. Gotcha. Alex leaves the door open. The sun breaks through the clouds outside. Palm trees drip and concrete glistens. Cars sheen by, their wipers on sporadic. Janet Goddard, the director, looks down, pretends to study whatever she's holding. Fay knows that sudden sunlight makes her feel unattractive. In the window, Fay sees Dee's outline check its own watch with a tiny motion. Questions, all lined up? The outline asks. Easily, 4 slots worth, says the key grip. Category set, all monitors on the board check. Joan's nailing down the sequence now. That's my job, Fay says. Your job, the director hisses, is to tell Mommy, here, where your spooky little girlfriend could possibly be. Alex will need all the cards at the podium very soon. Dee tells the grip. Is what your job is today. Janet stares at Fay's back. Fay Goddard gives her ex-stepfather's wife, Janet Goddard, the finger in the window. One of those for every animal question, she says. The director rises, calls Fay a bitch, who looks like a praying mantis, and leaves through the open door, closing it. Bitch, Fay says. Dee complains with a weak smile that she seems simply to be surrounded by bitches. Muffy DeMott laughs, takes a seat in Alex's chair. Dee eases off the desk. A splinter snags and snaps on a pantyhose. She assumes a sort of crouch next to her daughter, who is in the desk chair, at the window, her bare feet resting on the sill. Dee's knees crackle. If she's not coming, Dee says softly, just tell me. Just so I can get a jump on fixing it with Merv, baby. It is true that Fay can see her mother's bright, faint image in the window. Here is her mother's middle-aged face, the immaculately colored and styled red hair, the sore-looking wrinkles that triangulate around her mouth and nose, trap and accumulate base and makeup as the face moves through the day. Dee's eyes are smoke red, supported by deep circles, pouches of dark blood. Dee is pretty, except for the circles. This year, Fay has been able to see the dark bags just starting to budge out from beneath her own eyes, which are her father's. Dark brown and slightly thyroidic. Fay can smell Dee's breath. She cannot tell whether her mother has had anything to drink. Fay Goddard is 26. Her mother is 50. Julie Smith is 20. Dee squeezes Fay's arm with a thin hand that's cold from the office. Fay rubs at her nose. She's not going to come, she told me. You'll have to bag it. The key grip leaps for a ringing phone. I lied, says Fay. My girl. Dee pats the arm she's squeezed. I sure didn't hear anything, says Muffy DeMont. Good, the grip is saying. Get her into makeup. She looks over at Dee. You want her in makeup? You did good, Dee tells Fay, indicating the closed door. I don't think Mr. Griffin is well, says the cue card lady. He and the boy deserve each other. We can throw in the WAC. We can call her General Neurosis. Dee uses a thin hand to bring Fay's face close to her own. She kisses her gently. Their lips fit perfectly. Fay thinks suddenly. She shivers in the air conditioning. Jeopardy. Queen dethroned after 3-year reign. Headline, Variety, March 13th, 1988. Let's all be there, says the television. Where else would I be? Asks Dee Goddard in her chair, in her office, at night, in 1987. We bring good things to life, says the television. So did I, says Dee. I did that, just once. Dee sits in her office at Merv Griffin Enterprises every weeknight and kills a tinkling pitcher of wet, weak martinis. Her office walls are covered with store-bought aphorisms. Humpty Dumpty was pushed. When the going gets tough, the tough go shopping. Also autographed photos. Dee and Bob Barker, when she wrote for Truth or Consequences. Merv Griffin, giving her a plaque. Dee and Fay, between Wink Martindale and Chuck Barris at a banquet. Dee uses her remote map panel to switch from NBC to MTV on cable. Consumptive-looking boys in makeup play guitars that look more like jets or weapons than guitars. Does your husband still look at you the way he used to? Asks the television. Safe to say not, Dee says dryly, drinking. She drinks too much, Julie Smith says to Fay. It's for the pain, Fay says, watching. Julie looks through the remote viewer in Fay's office. For killing the pain or feeding it? Fay smiles. Julie shakes her head. It's mean to watch her like this. You deserve a break today, says the television. Milk likes you. The more you hear, the better we sound. Aren't you hungry for a flame-broiled Whopper? No, I am not hungry for a flame-broiled Whopper, says Dee, sitting up straight in her chair. No, I am not hungry for it. Her glass falls out of her hand. It was nice what she said about you, though. Julie is looking at the side of Fay's face, about bringing one good thing to life. Fay smiles as she watches the viewer. Did you hear about what Alex did today? Sajak says he and Alex are now at war. Alex got in the engineer's booth and played with the applause sign all through the wheel's third slot. The audience was like applauding. Then people lost turns and stuff. Sajak says he's going to get him. So you don't forget, says the television. Look at all you get. Wow, says Dee. She sleeps in her chair. Fay and Julie sit on thin towels in 1987 at the edge of the surf, nude on a nude beach south of Los Angeles, just past dawn. The sun is behind them. The early Pacific is lilac. The women's feet are washed and abandoned by a weak surf. The sky's color is kind of grotesque. Julie has told Fay that she believes lovers go through 3 different stages in getting really to know one another. First, they exchange anecdotes and inclinations. Then each tells the other what she believes. Then each observes the relation between what the other says she believes and what she in fact does. Julie and Fay are exchanging anecdotes and inclinations for the 20th straight month. Julie tells Fay that she, Julie, best likes contemporary poetry, unkind women, words with univocal definitions, faces whose expressions change by the second, an obscure and limited edition Canadian encyclopedia called Laplace's Guide to Total Data, the gentle smell of powder that issues from the makeup compacts of older ladies, and the OED. The encyclopedia turned out to be lucrative, I guess you'd have to say. Julie sniffs air that smells yeasty. It got to be just what the teachers tell you. The encyclopedia was my friend. As a child, you mean? Fay touches Julie's arm. Men would just appear, one day after the other. I felt so sorry for my mother. These blank, silent men. And she'd hook up with one after the other. And they'd move in. And not one single one could love my brother. Come here. Sometimes things would be ugly. I remember her leading a really ugly life. But she'd lock us in rooms when things got bad, to get us out of the way of it. Julie smiles to herself. At first, sometimes I remember she'd give me a straight edge and a pencil to amuse myself. I could amuse myself with a straight edge for hours. I always liked straight edges, too. It makes worlds. I could make worlds out of lines. A sort of jagged magic. I'd spend all day. My brother watched. There are no gulls on this beach at dawn. It's quiet. The tide is going out. But we had a set of these Laplace's data guides. Her 4th husband sold them to salesmen who went door to door. I kept a few in every room she locked us in. They did, really and truly, become my friends. I got to be able to feel lines of consistency and inconsistency in them. I got to know them really well. Julie looks at Fay. I won't apologize if that sounds stupid or dramatic. It doesn't sound stupid. It's no fun to be a kid with a damaged brother and a mother with an ugly life, and to be lonely, not to mention locked up. See, though, it was him they were locking up. I was just there to watch him. An autistic brother simply cannot be decent company for somebody, no matter how much you loved him, is all I mean, Fay says, making an angle in the wet sand with her toe. Taking care of him took incredible amounts of time. He wasn't company, though. You're right. But I wanted him with me. He got to be my job. So I associated him with my identity or something. My right to take up space. I wasn't even 8. I can't believe you don't hate her, Fay says. None of the men with her could stand to have him around. Even the ones who tried couldn't stand it after a while. He'd just stare and flap his arms, and they'd say sometimes, when they looked in my mother's eyes, they'd see him looking out. Julie shakes some sand out of her short hair. Except he was bright. He was totally inside himself, but he was bright. He could stare at the same thing for hours and not be bored, and it turned out he could read. He read very slowly, and never out loud. I don't know what the words seemed like to him. Julie looks at Fay. I pretty much taught us both to read, with the encyclopedia, early. The illustrations really helped. I can't believe you don't hate her. Julie throws a pebble. Except I don't, Fay. She abandoned you by a road because some guy told her to. Julie looks at the divot where the pebble was. The divot melts. She really loved this man who was with her. She shakes her head. He made her leave him. I think she left me to look out for him. I'm thankful for that. If I'd been without him right then, I don't think there would have been any me left. Babe, I'd have been in hospitals all this time instead of him. What? Like he'd have been instantly unautistic if you weren't there to take care of him? Among things Julie Smith dislikes most are greeting cards, adoptive parents who adopt without first looking inside themselves and evaluating their capacity for love, the smell of sulfur, John Updike, insects with antennae, and animals in general. What about kind women? But insects are maybe the worst. Even if the insect stops moving, the antennae still wave around. The antennae never stop waving around. I can't stand that. I love you, Julie. I love you too, Fay. I couldn't believe I could ever love a woman like this. Julie shakes her head at the Pacific. Don't make me sad. Fay watches a small, antennaless bug on legs thin as hairs across the glassy surface of a tidal pool. She clears her throat. Okay, she says. This is the only line on an American football field, of which there's only one. Julie laughs. What is the 50? This, the only month of the year without a national holiday, is named for the Roman emperor who. What is August? The sun gets higher. The blood goes out of the blue water. The women move down to stay in the waves' reach. The ocean looks like a big blue dog to me. Sometimes, Fay says, looking. Julie puts an arm around Fay's bare shoulders. We loved her like a daughter, said Jeopardy public relations coordinator Muffy DeMott. We'll be sorry to see her go. Nobody's ever influenced a game show like Miss Smith influenced Jeopardy. Article, Variety, March 13th, 1988. Weak waves hang, snap, slide. White fingers spill onto the beach and melt into the sand. Fay can see dark sand lighten beneath them as the water inside gets tugged back out with the retreating tide. The beach settles and hisses as it pales. Fay is looking at the side of Julie Smith's face. Julie has the best skin Fay's ever seen on anyone anywhere. It's not just that it's so clear, it's flawed, or that here in low sun, off water, it's the color of a good blush wine. It has a texture of something truly alive, an elastic softness, like a ripe sheath, a pod. It is vulnerable and has depth. It's stretched shiny and tight, only over Julie's high curved cheekbones. The bones make her cheeks hollow, her eyes deep set. The outlines of her face are like clefts, almost Slavic. Everything about her is sort of permeable. Even the slim, dark gap between her two front teeth seem a kind of slot, some recessive invitation. Julie has used the teeth and their gap to stimulate Fay with a gentle deftness Fay would not have believed. Julie has looked up. Why, though? Fay looks blankly, shakes her head. Poetry, you were talking about. Julie smiles, touching Fay's cheek. Fay lights a cigarette in the wind. I've just never liked it. It beats around bushes. Even when I like it, it's nothing more than a really oblique way of saying the obvious, it seems like. Julie grins. Her front teeth have a gap. Olé, she says, but consider how very, very few of us have the equipment to deal with the obvious. Fay laughs. She wets a finger and makes a scoreboard mark in the air. They both laugh. An anomalous wave breaks big in the surf. Fay's finger tastes like smoke and salt. Pat Sajak and Alex Trebek and Bert Convey sit around, in slacks and loosened neckties, in the Merv Griffin Entertainment Executive Lounge, in the morning, watching a tape of last year's World Series. On the lounge's giant screen, a batter flails at a low pitch. That was low, Trebek says. Bert Convey, who is soaking his contact lenses, squints at the replay. Trebek sits up straight. Name the best lowball hitter of all time. Joe Pepitone, Sajak says without hesitation. Trebek looks incredulous. Joe Pepitone? Willie Stargell was a great lowball hitter, says Convey. The other two men ignore him. Reggie Jackson was great, Sajak muses. Still is, Trebek says, looking absently at his nails. A game show host has a fairly easy professional life. All 5 of a week's slots can be shot in one long day. Usually one hard week a month is spent on performance work at the studio. The rest of the host's time is his own. Bert Convey makes the rounds of car shows and small openings and Love Boat episodes, and is a millionaire several times over. Pat Sajak plays phenomenal racquetball and gardens and is learning his 3rd language by mail. Alex, known in the industry as the most dedicated host since Bill Cullen, is to be seen lurking almost daily in some area of the MGE facility, reading, throat clearing, grooming, worrying. There's a hit. Sajak throws a can of soda at the screen. Trebek and Convey laugh. Sajak looks over at Bert Convey. How's that tooth, Bert? Convey's hand strays to his mouth. Still discolored, he says grimly. Trebek looks up. You've got a discolored tooth? Convey feels at a bared canine. A temporary thing, already clearing up. He narrows his eyes at Alex Trebek. Just don't tell Merv about it. Trebek looks around, as if to see who Convey is talking to. Me? This guy right here? Do I look like that sort of person? You look like a game show host. Trebek smiles broadly. Probably because of my perfect and beautiful and flawless teeth. Bastard, mutters Convey. Sajak tells them both to pipe down. The dynamics of the connection between Fay Goddard and Julie Smith tend, those around them find, to resist clear articulation. Fay is 26 and has worked research on the Jeopardy staff for the past 40 months. Julie is 20, has foster parents in La Jolla, and has retained her Jeopardy championship through over 700 market-dominating slots. 40 months ago, game show production mogul Merv Griffin decided to bring the popular game Jeopardy back from syndicated oblivion, to retire Art Fleming in favor of the waxily handsome, fairly distinguished, and predominantly dedicated Alex Trebek, the former model who'd made his bones in the game show industry hosting the short-lived High Rollers for Barris/NBC. D. Goddard, who'd written for shows as old as Truth or Consequences and Name That Tune, had worked promotion/distribution on The Joker's Wild, and had finally produced the commercially shaky but critically acclaimed Gambit, was hired by MGE as the new Jeopardy's production executive. A period of disordered tension followed Griffin's decision to name Janet Lerner Goddard, 48, winner of 2 Clios, but also the wife of Dee's former husband, as director of the revised show. And in fact, Dee is persuaded to stay only when Merv Griffin's executive assistant puts in a personal call to New York, where Fay Goddard, having left Bryn Mawr in 1982 with a degree in library science, is doing an editorial stint at Puzzle magazine. Merv's right-hand man offers to put Fay on staff at Jeopardy as category/question researcher. Fay works for her mother. Summer 1985. Fay has been on the Jeopardy team maybe 4 months when a soft-spoken and weirdly pretty young woman comes in off the freeway with a dirty jeans jacket, a backpack, and a Times classified ad detailing an MGE contestant search. The girl says she wants Jeopardy. She's been told she has a head for data. Fay interviews her and is mildly intrigued. The girl gets a solid but by no means spectacular score on his CBE general knowledge quiz, this particular version of which turns out to feature an important zoology section. Julie Smith barely makes it into an audition round. In a taped audition round, flanked by a swarthy Shriner from Encino and a twig-thin Reading librarian with a towering blonde wig, Julie takes the game by a wide margin, but has trouble speaking clearly into her microphone, as well as difficulty with the quirky and distinctive Jeopardy inversion by which the host asks the answer and a contestant supplies the appropriate question. Fay gives Julie an audition score of 3 out of 5. Usually, only 5s and 4s are to be called back, but Alex Trebek, who spends at least part of his free time haunting audition rounds, likes the girl, even after she turns down his invitation for a cola at the MGE commissary, and Dee Goddard and Muffy DeMont pick Julie out for special mention from among 18 other perspectives on the audition tape, and no one on the staff of a program, still in its stressful initial struggle to break back into a respectable market share, has anything against hauntingly attractive young female contestants, etc. Julie Smith is called back for insertion into the contestant rotation sometime in early September 1985. Jeopardy slots 46 through 49 are shot on September 17th. Miss Julie Smith of Los Angeles first appears in the 46th slot. No one can quite remember who the reigning champion was at that time. Palindromes, musical astrology, the 18th century, famous Edwards, the Bible, fashion history, states of mind, sports without balls. Julie runs the board in both rounds, every question. Never been done before, even under Fleming. The other 2 contestants, Slack and Gray, have to be helped off stage. Julie wins $22,500, every buck on the board, in half an hour. She earns no more in this first match, only because a flustered Alex Trebek declares the final Jeopardy wagering round moot. Julie Smith, having no incentive to bet any of her winnings against opponents' scores of $0 and $400, respectively. A wide-eyed and grinning Trebek doffs a pretend cap to a blank-faced Julie as electric bongos rattle to the running of the closing credits. 10 minutes later, Fay Goddard locates a missing Julie Smith in a remote section of the contestants' dressing area. Returning contestants are required to change clothes between each slot, conducing to the illusion that they've come back again tomorrow. It's time for Jeopardy, slot 47, a crown to defend and all that. Julie sits staring at herself in a harsh makeup mirror framed with glowing bulbs, her face loose and expressionless. She has trouble reacting to stimuli. Fay has to get her a wet cloth and talk her through dressing and practically carry her upstairs to the set. Fay is in the engineer's booth, trying to communicate to her mother her doubts about whether the strange new champion can make it through another televised round, when Janet Goddard calmly directs her attention to the monitor. Julie is eating slot 47 and spitting it out in little pieces. Lady Bird Johnson's real first name turns out to be Claudia. The Florida city that produces more Havana cigars than all of Cuba is revealed to be Tampa. Julie's finger abuses the buzzer. She's on Alex's answers with the appropriate questions before he can even end to punctuate his clues. The first round board is taken. Janet cuts to commercial. Julie sits at her little desk, staring out at a hushed studio audience. Fay and Dee watch Julie as the red lights light and Trebek's face falls into the worn creases of her professional smile. Something happens to Julie Smith when the red lights light. Just a something. The girl who gets a 3 score and who stares with no expression is gone. Every concavity in that person now looks to have come convex. The camera lingers on her. It seems to ogle. Often Julie appears on screen while Trebek is still reading a clue. Her face, on screen, gives off an odd lambent UHF flicker. Her expression, brightly serene, radiates a sort of oneness with the board's data. Trebek manipulates the knot of his tie. Fay knows he feels the something, the odd, focused flux in the game's flow. The studio audience gasps and whispers as Julie supplies the Latin name for the common radish. No one knows the Latin word for radish, Fay says to Dee. That's one of those deadly ones I put in on purpose in every game. The other 2 contestants' postures deteriorate. Someone in the audience loudly calls Julie's name. Trebek, who has never before had an audience get away from him, gets more and more flustered. He uses 40 expensive seconds, relating a tired anecdote involving a Dodgers game he saw with Tom Brokaw. The audience hoots impatiently for the game to continue. Bad feeling, here, Fay whispers. Dee ignores her, bends to the monitor. Janet signals Alex for a break. Moist and upstaged, Alex promises America that he'll be right back, that he's eager to inquire on air about the tremendous Miss Smith and even more tremendous personal sacrifices she must have made to have absorbed so much data at such a tender age. Jeopardy breaks for a Triscuit advertisement. Fay and Dee stare at the monitor in horror. The studio audience is transfixed as Julie Smith's face crumples like a Kleenex in a pocket. She begins silently to weep. Tears move down the clefts of her cheeks and drip into her mic, where, for some reason, they hiss faintly. Janet, in the booth, is at a loss. Fay is sent for a cold compress, but can't make the set in time. The lights light. America watches Julie Smith murder every question on the double Jeopardy board, her face and vinyl jacket slickered with tears. Trebek, suddenly and cucumberously cool, pretends he notices nothing, though he never asks, and never in hundreds of slots does he ask Julie Smith any of the promised personal questions. The game unfolds. Fay watched a new third Julie respond to answer after answer. Julie's face dries, hardens. She's looking at Trebek with eyes narrowed to the width of paper cuts. In Final Jeopardy, her opponents, again, cashless. Julie coolly overrides Trebek's moot motion and bets her entire 22-5 on the fact that the first part of Peking Man discovered was a parenthesis-shaped fragment of mandible. She ends with $45,000. Alex pretends to genuflect. The audience applauds. There are bongos. And in a closing moment that Fay Goddard owns, captured in a bright, glossy that hangs over her iron desk, Julie Smith, on television, calmly and deliberately gives Alex Trebek the finger. A nation goes wild. The switchboards at MGE and NBC begin jangled two-day symphonies. Pat Sajak sends 36 long-stemmed reds to Julie's dressing table. The market share for the last segment of Jeopardy, slot 47, is at 50, on a par with Super Bowls and assassinations. This is September 17th, 1985. My favorite word, says Alex Trebek, is moist. It is my favorite word, especially when used in combination with my second favorite word, which is induce. He looks at the doctor. I'm just associating. Is it okay if I just associate? Alex Trebek's psychiatrist says nothing. A dream, says Trebek. I have this recurring dream where I'm standing outside the window of a restaurant watching a chef flip pancakes, except it turns out they're not pancakes, they're faces. I'm watching a guy in a chef's hat flip faces with a spatula. The psychiatrist makes a church steeple with his fingers and contemplates the steeple. I think I'm just tired, says Trebek. I think I'm just bone weary. I continue to worry about my smile, that it's starting to maybe be a tired smile, which is not an inviting smile, which is professionally worrying. He clears his throat, and it's the worry I think that's making me tired in the first place. It's like a vicious, smiling circle. The girl you work with, says the doctor, and Convey reveals today that he's getting a discolored tooth. Trebek says, tell me that augurs well. Why don't you? The contestant you talk about all the time. She lost, Trebek says, rubbing the bridge of his nose. She lost yesterday. Don't you read papers, ever? She lost to her own brother, after Janet and Merv's exec snuck the damaged little bastard in with a rigged 5 audition and a board, just crawling with animal questions. The psychiatrist hikes his eyebrows a little. They are black and angled, almost hinged. Queer story behind that, Trebek says, manipulating a broad, bright cufflink to produce lines of reflected window light on the ceiling's tile. I got it about fourth hand, but still. Parents abandoned the children as kids. There was the girl and her brother, Lunt. Can you imagine a champion named Lunt? Lunt was autistic to where this was like a mannequin of a kid instead of a kid. Muffy said the girl used to carry him around like a suitcase. Then finally he and the girl got abandoned out in the middle of nowhere somewhere. But the parents, Grizzly. She got adopted and the brother was institutionalized in a state institution. This hopelessly autistic kid, who it turns out he's got the whole Laplace's data guide memorized. They were both forced to somehow memorize this thing as kids. And I thought I had a rotten childhood. Boy, Trebek shakes his head. But he got put away, and the girl got adopted by some people in La Jolla who were not, from the sense I get, princes among men. She ran away. She got on the show. She kicked ass. She was fair and a good sport and took no crapola. She used her prize money to pay these staggering bills for Lunt's autism, moved him to a private hospital in the desert that was supposed to specialize in sort of yanking people outside themselves into the world. Trebek clears his throat. And I guess they yanked him okay, he says, at least to where he could talk, though he still hides his head under his arm whenever things get tense. Plus he's weird looking, and Buddy comes and bumps her off with this torrent of zoology data. Trebek plays with the cufflink. And she's gone. You said in our last hour together that you thought you loved her. She's a lesbian, Trebek says wearily. She's a lesbian through and through. I think she's one of those political lesbians. You know the kind? The kind with the anger? She looks at men like they're unsightly stains on the air. Plus, she's involved with our dits of a head researcher, which if you don't think the FCC took a dim view of that little liaison, you've got another. Free associate, orders the doctor. Image association? I have no problem with that. I invited the girl for coffee, or a tab, years ago, right at the start, in the commissary, and she gave me this haunting, moisture-inducing look, then tells me she could never imbibe caffeine with a man who wore a digital watch. The hell, she says. She gave me the finger on national television. She's practically got a crew cut. Sometimes she looks like a vampire. Once, in the contestant booth is where we keep all the contestants for all the slots. Once, one of the lights in the booth was flickering. They're fluorescent lights, and she said to get her the hell out of that booth. That flickering fluorescence made her feel like she was in a nightmare. And there was a sort of nightmare quality to that light, I remember. It was like there was a pulse in the neon, like blood. Everybody in the booth got nervous. Trebek strokes his mustache. Odd girl. Something odd about her. When she smiled, things got bright, too focused. It took the fun out of it, somehow. I love her, I think, Trebek says. She has a way, with a piece of data, to see her with an answer. Is there such a thing as an intellectual caress? I think of us together. Seas part, stars shine spotlights. And this researcher she's involved with. Nice enough girl. A thick, friendly girl. Not fantastically bright. A little emotional. Has this adoration versus loathing thing with her mother. Trebek ponders. My opinion, Faye is the sort of girl who's constantly surfing on her emotions. You know, not really in control of where they take her. But not quite ever wiping out yet, either. A psychic surfer, but scary looking, for so young. These black, bulging, buggy eyes. Perfectly round and black. Impressive breasts, though. Mother conflicts? Faye's mother is one very tense production exec, spends far too much time obsessing about not obsessing about the fact that our director is her ex-husband's wife. A woman? Janet Lerner Goddard, worst director I've ever worked with. Dee hates her. Janet likes to play with Dee's head. It's a head that admittedly tends to be full of gin. Janet likes to put little trinkety reminders of Dee's ex in Dee's mailbox at the office. Old bills. Tie clips. She plays with Dee's mind. Dee's obsessing herself into stasis. She's barely able to even function at work anymore. Image associated with this person? You know those ultra-modern rifles, where the mechanisms of aiming far outnumber those of firing? Dee's like that. God, am I worried about potentially ever being like that? The psychiatrist thinks they have done all they can for today. He shows Trebek the door. I also really like the word bedizen, Trebek says. In those first fall weeks of 1985, a public that grows with each Nielsen sweep discerns only two areas of even potential competitive vulnerability in Miss Julie Smith of Los Angeles. One has to do with animals. Julie is simply unable to respond to clues about animals. In her fourth slot, categories in Double Jeopardy include marsupials and zoological songs. And an eidetic pharmacist from Westwood pushes Julie all the way to Final Jeopardy before she crushes him with a bold bet on Eva Braun's shoe size. In her fifth slot, and what is, according to the game's publicized rules, to be her last, if a winner, she'll be retired as a 5-time champion. Julie goes up against a spectacularly fat Berkeley mailman who claims to be a co-founder of the California chapter of Mensa. The third contestant is a neurasthenic, both gorgeous. Alex keeps straightening his tie. Fullerton's stenographer, who wipes her lips compulsively on the sleeve of her blouse. The stenographer quickly accumulates a negative score and becomes hysterically anxious during the second commercial break, convinced by the skunked, vengeful, and whispering mailman that she will have to pay Jeopardy the $900 she's down before they will let her leave the set. Faye dashes out during off-air. The woman cannot seem to be reassured. She keeps looking wildly at the exits as Faye turns off stage and the red lights light. A bell initiates Double Jeopardy. Julie, refusing to meet the audience's eye, begins pausing a bit before she responds to Alex. She leaves openings. Only the mailman capitalizes. Julie stays ahead of him. Faye watches the stenographer, who is clearly keeping it together only through enormous exercise of will. The mailman closes on Julie. Julie assumes a look of distaste and runs the board for several minutes, down to the very last answer. Ancient Rome for 1,000, author of De Oratore, who was executed by Octavian in 43 BC. Julie's finger hovers over the buzzer. She looks to the stenographer. The mailman's eyes are closed in data search. The stenographer's head snaps up. She looks wildly at Julie and buzzes in with, "Who is Tully?" There is a silence. Trebek looks at his index card. He shakes his head. The stenographer goes to $1,900 and seems to suffer something resembling a petit mal seizure. Faye watches Julie Smith buzz in now and whisper into her mic that, though Alex was doubtless looking for the question, "Who is Cicero?" In point of fact, one Marcus Tullius Cicero, 106 to 43 BC, was known variously as both Cicero and Tully. Just as Augustus's less common appellation is Octavian, she points out, indicating the card in the host's hand. Trebek looks at the card. Fay flies to the resource room. The verdict takes only seconds. The stenographer gets the credit and the cash. Out of the emotional red, she hugs Julie on camera. The mailman fingers his lapels. Julie smiles a really magnificent smile. Alex, generally moved, declaims briefly on the spirit of good, clean competition he's proud to have witnessed here today. Final Jeopardy sees Julie effect the utter annihilation of the mailman, who is under the impression that the first literature in India was written by Kipling. The slot pulls down a 65 share. Hardly anyone notices Julie's and the stenographer's exchange of phone numbers as the bongos play. Fay gets a tongue lashing from Muffy Dumont on the inestimable importance of researching all possible questions to a given answer. The shot of Julie buzzing in with the correction makes the newsmaker's column of Newsweek. That night, Merv Griffin's executive assistant calls an emergency policy meeting of the whole staff. MGE's best minds take counsel. Alex and Fay are invited to sit in. Fay calls downstairs for coffee and Cokes and Merv's special seltzer. Griffin murmurs to his right-hand man. His man has a shiny face and a black toupee. The man nods, rises. Can't let her go. Too good. Too hot. She's become the whole show. Look at these figures. He brandishes figures. Rules, though, says the director. 5 slots. Retire undefeated. Come back for Champions Tourney in April. Annual event. Tradition. Art Fleming. Fairness to whole contestant pool. An ethics type of thing. Griffin whispers into his shiny man's ear. Again, the man rises. Balls, the shiny man says to the director. The girl's magic. Figures do not lie. The Trisket people have offered to double the price on 30-second spots, long as she stays. He smiles with his mouth, but not his eyes. Fay sees. Shoot, Janet. We could just call this the Julia Smith Show and still make mints. Julie, says Fay. Absolutely. Griffin whispers up at his men. Need Merv mention we should all see substantial salary and benefit incentives at work here? Says the shiny man, flipping a watch fob. A chance here to be industry heroes, heroines, MGE, a Camelot. You, all of you, knights. Looks around. Scratch that. Queens, entertainment Amazons. You don't get rid of a 60 share without a fight, says D, who's seated next to Fay, sipping at what looks, to Fay, a little too much like water. The director whispers something in Muffy Dumont's ear. There's a silence. Griffin rises to stand with his man. I've seen the tapes, and I'm impressed, and I've never been impressed before. She's like some lens, a filter for that great unorganized force that some in the industry have spent their whole lives trying to locate and focus. This is Merv Griffin saying this. Eyes around the table are lowered. What is that force? Merv asks quietly, looks around. He and his man sit back down. Alex goes to the door to relieve a winded gopher of refreshments. Griffin whispers, and the shiny man rises. Merv posits that this force, ladies, gentlemen, is the capacity of facts to transcend their internal factual limitations and become, in and of themselves, meaning, feeling. This girl not only kicks facts in the ass, this girl informs trivia with import. She makes it human, something with the power to emote, evoke, induce, cathart. She gives the game the simultaneous transparency and mystery all of us in the industry have groped for decades. A sort of union of contestantorial head, heart, gut, buzzer finger. She is, or can become, the game show incarnate. She is mystery. What, like a cult thing? Alex Trebek asks, opening a can of soda at arm's length. Merv Griffin gives Trebek a cold stare. Merv's man's face gleams. See that window? He says. That's where the rules go. Out the window. Feels at his nose. Does your conscientious entertainer retain? And here I say, think about all the implications of retention here. Looking at Janet. I mean, does he cling blindly to rules for their own sake when the very goal and purpose and idea of those rules walks right in off the street and into the hearts of every Trisket consumer in the free world? Safe to say not, Dee says dryly. The man. So here's the scoop. She stays till she's bumped. We cannot and will not give her any help on air. Off air, she gets anything within what Merv defines as reason. We get her to play a little ball. Go easy on the board. When strategy allows, give the other players a bit of a shot. We tell her we want to play ball. Dumont here is one of our carrots. Muffy Dumont wipes her mouth on a commissary napkin. I'm a carrot. If the girl plays ball, then you, Dumont, you start in on helping the kid shelter her income. Tell her we'll give her shelter under MGE. Take her from the 70 bracket to something more like a 20. Capiche? She's got to play ball with a carrot like that. She sends all her money to a hospital her brother's in, Fay says softly, next to her mother. Hospital? Merv Griffin asks. What hospital? Fay looks at Griffin. All she told me was her brother was in Arizona in a hospital because he was trouble living in the world. The world, Griffin asks. He looks at his man. Griffin's man touches his wig carefully, looks at Muffy. Get on that, DeMont, he says. This hospitalized brother thing. If it's good PR, see that it's peed. Take the girl aside, fill her in, tell her about the rules in the window. Tell her she's here as long as she can hang. A significant pause. Tell her Merv might want to do lunch at some point. Merv looks at Fay. All right. Merv Griffin glances at his watch. Everyone is instantly up. Papers are shuffled. D, Merv says from his chair, absently fingering a canine tooth. You and your daughter, stay for a moment, please. Idaho, coins, Truffaut, patron saints, historical cocktails, animals, winter sports, 1879, the French Revolution, botanical songs, the Talmud, nuts to you. One contestant, slot 287, December 4th, 1986, is a bespectacled teenage boy with a smear of acne and a shallow chest in a faded Mozart t-shirt. He claims on air to have revised the Western solar calendar into complete isomorphism with the atomic clocks at the U.S. Bureau of Time Measurement in Washington. He eyes Julie beadily. Annie and all of his winnings, he says, will go toward realizing his father's fantasy. His father's fantasy turns out to be a spa in the backyard of the family's Orange County home, with an elephant on permanent duty at either side of the spa, spouting. God, am I tired, Alex intones to Fay over a soda and handkerchief at the third commercial break. Past Alex, Fay sees Julie at her little desk, looking out at the studio audience. People in the audience vie for her attention. The boy's hopes for elephants are dashed in Final Jeopardy. He claims shrilly that the Islamic week specifies no particular Sabbath. Friday, Julie whispers. Alex cues bongos, asks the audience to consider the fact that Californians never, he emphasizes, seem to face east. Just the fact on the brother who can't live in the world is all I want, Merv Griffin says, pushing at his cuticles with a paperclip. D makes soft sounds of assent. The kid's autistic, Fay says. I can't really see why you'd want data on a damaged person. Merv continues to address himself to D. What's wrong with him exactly? Are there different degrees of autisticness? Can he talk? What's his prognosis? Would he excite pathos? Does he look too much like the girl? And etc. We want total data on Smith's brother, iterates the gleaming face of Merv's man. Why? D looks at the empty glass in her hand. The potential point, Merv murmurs, is, can the brother do with the datum what she can do with the datum? He switches the paperclip to his left hand. Does the fact that he has, as Fay here put it, trouble being in the world, together with what have to be impressive genetics by association, he smiles, add up to mystery status, game show incarnation? He works a cuticle. Can he do what she can do? Imagine the possibilities, says the shiny man. We're looking way down the road on this thing. A climax type of deal, right? Antagon thing. If she's going to get bumped sometime, we obviously want to bump her with the same kind of draw. The brother's expensive hospitalization at the sister's selfless expense is already great PR. Is he mystery? I want to know, says Merv. He's autistic, Fay says, staring bug-eyed, meaning they're like trying to teach him just to talk coherently. How not to go into convulsions whenever somebody looks at him. You're thinking about maybe trying to put him on the air? Merv's man stands at the dark office window. Imagine sustaining the mystery beyond the individual girl herself is what Merv means. The mystery of total data. That mystery made us sort of antic. Ontic self-perpetuation. We're talking fact-sustaining feeling, right through the change that inevitably attends all feeling, Fay. We're thinking perpetuation is what we're thinking, says Merv. Every thumb over at Triscuit is up on this one. Dee's posture keeps deteriorating as they stand there. Remember, ladies, Mervman says from the window, you're either part of the solution or you're part of the precipitate. He guffaws. Griffin slaps his knee. 9 months later, Fay is back in the office of Griffin's man. The man has different hair, he says. I say 2 words to you, Fay. I say FCC, and I say separate apartments. We do not, I repeat, not need even a whiff of scandal. We do not need a $64,000 question type scandal kind of deal. Am I right? So I say to you FCC and separate pads. You do good research, Fay. We treasure you here. I personally heard Merv use the word treasure in connection with your name. I don't give her any answers, Fay says. The man nods vigorously. Fay looks at the man. She doesn't need them. All I'm saying to you is let's make our dirty linen a private matter, says the shiny man. Treasure or no. So I say, keep your lovely glass apartment that I hear so much about. That first year, ratings slip a bit, as they always do. They level out at incredible. MGE stock splits 3 times in 9 months. Alex buys a car so expensive he's worried about driving it. He takes the bus to work. D and the Q card lady acquire property in the canyons. Fay explores IRAs with the help of Muffy DeMont. Julie moves to a bungalow in Burbank, continues to live on fruit and seeds, and sends everything, after her minimal, post-shelter taxes, to the Palo Verde Psychiatric Hospital in Tucson. She turns down a People cover. Fay explains to the people that Julie is basically a private person. It quickly gets to the point where Julie can't go out anywhere without some sort of disguise. Fay helps her select a mustache and explains to her about not too much glue. Extrapolation from LAX airport flight plan data yields a scenario in which Merv Griffin's shiny man, Jeopardy director Janet Goddard, and a Mr. Mel Goddard, who works subsidiary rights at Screen Gems, board the shiny man's new Piper Cub on the afternoon of September 17th, 1987, fly nonstop to Tucson, Arizona, and enjoy a 3-day stay among flying ants and black spiders and unimaginable traffic and several sizzling, carbonated summer monsoons. Dethroning Miss Smith after 700-plus victories last night was one Mr. Lunt of Arizona, a young man whose habit of hiding his head under his arm at crucial moments distracted not at all from the virtuosity with which he worked a buzzer and board that had, for years, been the champion's own. Article, Variety, March 13th, 1988. What next for Smith? Headline, Variety, March 14th, 1988. Los Angeles at noon today in 1987 is really hot. A mailman in mailman shorts and wool knee socks sits eating his lunch in the black guts of an open mailbox. Air shimmers over the concrete like fuel. Sunglasses ride every face in sight. Fay and Julie are walking around West LA. Fay wears a bathing suit and rubber thongs. Her thongs squeak and slap. You did what? Fay says. You did what for a living before you saw our ad? A psychology professor at UCLA was doing tests on the output of human saliva in response to different stimuli. I was a professional subject. You were a professional salivator? They paid me. Fay, I was 17. I'd had to hitch from La Jolla. I had no money, no place to stay. I ate seeds. What? He'd like ring bells or wave chocolate at you and see if you'd drool? Julie laughs, gap-toothed, in mustache and sunglasses, her short spiked hair hidden under a safari hat. Not exactly. So what, then? Fay's thongs squeak and slap. Your shoes sound like sex, Julie says. Don't think even one day doesn't go by, says veteran reference book sales representative P. Craig Lunt in the office of the game show production mogul, who's looking studiously down, manipulating a plastic disc, trying to get a BB in the mouth of a clown. Dee Goddard and Muffy DeMont sit in Dee's office, overlooking the freeway, today at noon in the air conditioning, with a pitcher of martinis, watching the all-new Newlywed Game. It's the all-new Newlywed Game, says the television. Weak show, says Dee. All they do on this show is humiliate newlyweds, a series of low gags. I like this show, Muffy says, reaching for the pitcher that's refrigerating in front of the air conditioner. It's people's own fault if they're going to let Bob Eubanks embarrass them on national daytime just for a dryer or a ski-mobile. Cheap show. Mel got a look at their books once. A really chintzy operation. Dee jiggles a lemon twist. Bob Eubanks' head fills the screen. Jesus, will you look at the size of the head on that guy? Youthful looking, though, Muffy muses. He never seems to age. I wonder how he does it. He's traded his soul for his face. He worships bright knives. He makes sacrifices to dark masters on behalf of his face. Muffy looks at Dee. A special grand prize, chosen just for you, says the television. Dee leans forward. Will you just look at that head? His forehead simply dominates the whole shot. They must need a special lens. I sort of like him. He's sort of funny. I'm just glad he's on the inside of the set, and I'm on the outside, and I can turn him off whenever I want. Muffy holds her drink up to the window's light and looks at it. And of course, you never lie there awake in the dark, considering the possibility that it's the other way around. Dee crosses her ankles under her chair. Dear child, we are in this business precisely to make sure that is not a possibility. They both laugh. You hear stories, though, Muffy says, about these lonely or somehow disturbed people who've had only the TV all their lives. Their parents, or whomever, started them right off by plunking them down in front of the set. And as they get older, the TV comes to be their whole emotional world. It's all they have, and it becomes, in a way, their whole way of defining themselves as existence, with a distinct identity, that they're outside the set, and everything else is inside the set. She sips. Stay right where you are, says the television. And then you hear about how every once in a while, one of them gets on TV somehow, by accident, says Muffy. There's a shot of them in the crowd at a ball game, or they're interviewed on the street about a referendum or something, and they go home and plunk right down in front of the set, and all of a sudden, they look, and they're inside the set. Muffy pushes her glasses up, and sometimes you hear about how it drives them mad, sometimes. There ought to be special insurance for that or something, Dee says, tinkling the ice in the pitcher. Maybe that's an idea. Dee looks around. You seen the vermouth around here anyplace? Julie and Fay walk past a stucco house the color of Pepto-Bismol. A VW bus is backing out of the driveway. It sings the high sad song of the Volkswagen in reverse. Fay
wipes her forehead with her arm. She feels moist and sticky, something hot in a baggie. But, so I don't know what to tell them, she says. Being involved with a woman doesn't automatically make you a lesbian, says Julie. It doesn't make me marry Osmond either, though. Julie laughs. A cross you'll have to bear. She takes Fay's hand. Julie and Fay take walks a lot. Fay drives over to Julie's place and helps her into her disguise. Julie wears a mustache and hat, Bermuda shorts, a Hawaiian shirt, and a Nikon. Except, what if I am a lesbian? Fay asks. She looks at a small child methodically punching a mild-faced father in the back of the thigh while the father buys Haagen-Dazs from a vendor. I mean, what if I am a lesbian, and people ask me why I'm a lesbian? Fay releases Julie's hand to pinch sweat off her upper lip. What do I say if they ask me why? You anticipate a whole lot of people questioning you about your sexuality? Julie asks. Or are there particular people you're worried about? Fay doesn't say anything. Julie looks at her. I can't believe you really even care. Maybe I do. What questions I care about aren't really your business. You're why I might be a lesbian. I'm just asking you to tell me what I can say. Julie shrugs. Say whatever you want. She has to keep straightening her mustache from the heat. Say lesbianism is simply one kind of response to otherness. Say the whole point of love is to try to get your fingers through the holes in the lover's mask, to get some kind of hold on the mask. And who cares how you do it? I don't want to hear mask theories, Julie, Fay says. I want to hear what I should really tell people. Why don't you just tell me which people you're so worried about? Fay doesn't say anything. A very large man walks by. His face red as steak, his cowboy boots new, a huge tin star pinned to the lapel of his business suit. Julie starts to smile. Don't smile, says Fay. They walk in silence. The sky is clear and spread way out. It shines in its own sun, glassy as aftershave. Julie smiles to herself under her hat. The smile's cold. You know what's fun? If you want to have fun, she says, is to make up explanations. Give people reasons, if they want reasons. Anything you want. Make reasons up. It'll surprise you. The more improbable the reason, the more satisfied people will be. That's fun. I guarantee you, it's more fun than twirling with worry over the whole thing. Julie, Fay says suddenly, what about if you lose sometime? Do we stay together? Or does our being together depend on the show? A woman in terry cloth shorts is giving Julie a pretty brazen look. Julie looks away, in her hat. Here's one, she says. If people ask, you can give them this one. You fall totally in love with a man who tells you he's totally in love with you, too. He's older. He's important in terms of business. You give him all of yourself. He goes to France on important business. He won't let you come. You wait for days and don't hear from him. You call him in France, and a woman's voice says a French hello on the phone, and you hear the man's electric shaver in the background. A couple days later, you get a hasty French postcard he'd mailed on his first day there. It says, scenery is here. Wish you were beautiful. You reel into lesbianism from the pain. Fay looks at the curved side of Julie's face, deep skin of a perfect white grape. Julie says, tell them this man who broke your heart quickly assumed in your memory the aspects of a political cartoon, enormous head, tiny body, all unflattering features exaggerated. I can tell them, all men everywhere look that way to me now. Give them this one. You meet a boy at your East Coast college, a popular and beautiful, and above all, and this is what attracts you most, a terribly serious boy. A boy who goes to the library and gets out a copy of Gray's Anatomy. Researches the precise location and neurology of the female clitoris. Simply, you're convinced to allow him to give you pleasure. He plays your clitoris, your whole body, like a fine instrument. You fall for the boy completely. The intensity of your love creates what you could call an organic situation. A body can't walk without legs. Legs can't walk without a body. He becomes your body. But pretty soon, he gets tired of my body. No, he gets obsessed with your body. He establishes control over your own perception of your body. He makes you diet or gain weight. He makes you exercise. He supervises your haircuts, your makeovers. Your body can't make a move without him. You get muscular from the exercise. Your clothes get tighter and tighter. He traces your changing outline on huge sheets of butcher's paper and hangs them in his room in a sort of evolutionary progression. Your friends think you're nuts. You lose all your friends. He's introduced you to all his friends. He made you turn slowly around while he introduced you, so he could see you from every conceivable angle. I'm miserable with him. No, you're deliriously happy, but there's not much you at the precise moment you're feeling most complete. He makes me lift weights while he watches. He has barbells in his room. Your love, says Julie, springs from your incompleteness, but also reduces you to another's prosthetic attachment, calcified by the Medusa's gaze of his need. I told you, I didn't want abstractions about this stuff, Fay says impatiently. Julie walks, silent, with a distant frown of concentration. Fay sees a big butterfly beat incongruously at the smoke-black window of a long limousine. The limousine is at a red light. Now the butterfly falls away from the window. It drifts aimlessly to the pavement and lies there, bright. He makes you lift weights in his room at night while he sits and watches, Julie says quietly. Pretty soon, you're lifting weights nude while he watches from his chair. You begin to be uneasy. For the first time, you taste something like degradation in your mouth. The degradation tastes like tea. Night after night, it goes. Your mouth tastes like tea when he eventually starts going outside, to the window, to the outside of the window at night, to watch you lift weights nude. I feel horrible when he watches through the window. Plus, eventually, his friends. It turns out he starts inviting all his friends over at night to watch through the window with him as you lift weights. You're able to make out the outlines of all the faces of his friends. You can see them through your own reflection in the black glass. The faces are rigid with fascination. The faces remind you of the carved faces of pumpkins. As you look, you see a tongue come out of one of the faces and touch the window. You can't tell whether it's the beautiful, serious boy's tongue or not. I reel into lesbianism from the pain. You still love him, though. Faye's thongs slap. She wipes her forehead and considers. I'm in love with the guy, and we get engaged, and I start going over to his parents' house with him for dinner. One night, I'm setting the table, and I hear his father in the living room laughingly tell the guy that the penalty for bigamy is 2 wives. And the guy laughs too. An electronics shop pulls up alongside them. Faye sees a commercial behind the big window, reflected in the fly's eye prism of about 30 televisions. Alan Alda holds up a product between his thumb and forefinger, smiles at it.
You're in love with a man, says Julie, who insists that he can love you only when you're standing in the exact center of whatever room you're in. Pat Sajak plants lettuce in the garden of his Bel Air home. Bert Convey boards his Lear, bound for an Indianapolis motorhome expo. A dream, says Alex Trebek to the doctor with circumflex brows. I have this dream where I'm standing smiling over a lectern on a little hill in the middle of a field. The field, which is verdant and clovered, is covered with rabbits. They sit and look at me. There must be several million rabbits in that field. They all sit and look at me. Some of them lower their little heads to eat clover, but their eyes never leave me. They sit there and look at me. 1,000,000 bunny rabbits, and I look back. Uncle, says Patricia, Patty Joe, Smith Tilly Lunt, stout and loose-faced behind the cash register of the Holiday Inn restaurant at the Holiday Inn, Interstate 70, Ashtabula, Ohio. Uncle, 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 uncle. No, says Faye. I meet a man in the park. We're both walking. The man's got a tiny puppy, the cutest and most beautiful puppy I've ever seen. The puppy's on a little leash. When I meet the man, the puppy wags its tail so hard that it loses its little balance. The man lets me play with the puppy. I scratch its stomach, and it licks my hand. The man has a picnic lunch in a hamper. We spend all day in the park with the puppy. By sundown, I'm totally in love with the man with the puppy. I stay the night with him. I let him inside me. I'm in love. I start to see the man and the puppy whenever I close my eyes. I have a date with the man in the park a couple days later. This time, he's got a different puppy with him. Another beautiful puppy that wags its tail and licks my hand and the man's hand. The man says it's the first puppy's brother. Oh, Faye. And but this goes on, me meeting with the man in the park, him having a different puppy every time, and the man is so warm and loving and attentive toward both me and the puppies that soon I'm totally in love. I'm totally in love on the morning I follow the man to work, just to surprise him, like with a juice in Danish. And I follow him and discover that he's actually a professional cosmetics researcher who performs product experiments on puppies and kills them and dissects them, and that before he experiments on each puppy, he takes it to the park and walks it and uses the beautiful puppies to attract women, who he seduces. You're so crushed and revolted, you become a lesbian, says Julie. Pat Sajak comes close to skunking Alex Trebek in 3 straight games of racquetball. In the health club's locker room, Trebek experiments with a half Windsor and congratulates Sajak on the contract renewal and iterates hopes for no hard feeling, that applause sign gag. Still, Sajak says he's forgotten all about it and calls Trebek big fella, and there's some towel snapping and general camaraderie. I need you to articulate for me the dynamics of this connection between Faye Goddard and Julie Smith, Merv Griffin tells his shiny executive. His man stands at the office window, watching cars move by on the Hollywood freeway in the sun. The cars glitter. You and your mother happened to go to the movies, Faye says. She and Julie stand, wiping themselves in the shade of a leather shop's awning. You're a child. The movie is Son of Flubber from Disney. It lasts pretty much the whole afternoon. She gathers her hair at the back of her neck and lifts it. After the movie's over, and you and your mother are outside on the sidewalk, in the light, your mother breaks down. She has to be restrained by the ticket man. She's so hysterical. She tears at her beautiful hair that you've always admired and wished you could have had too. She's totally hysterical. It turns out a man in the theater behind you was playing with your mother's hair all through the movie. He was touching her hair in a sexual way. She was horrified and repulsed, but didn't make a sound the whole time. I guess for fear that you, the child, would discover that a strange man in the dark was touching your mother in a sexual way. She breaks down on the sidewalk. Her husband has to come. She spends a year on antidepressants. Then she drinks. Years later, her husband, your stepfather, leaves her for a woman. The woman has the same background, career interests, and general sort of appearance as your mother. Your mother gets obsessed with whatever slight differences between herself and the woman cause your stepfather to leave her for the woman. She drinks. The woman plays off her emotions, like the insecure and basically shitty human being she is, by dressing as much like your mother as possible, putting little mementos of your stepfather in your mother's inbox, coloring her hair the same shade of red as your mother does. You all work together in the same tiny but terrifyingly powerful industry. It's a tiny and sordid and claustrophobic little community where no one can get away from the nests they fouled. You reel into confusion. You meet this very unique and funny and sad and one-of-a-kind person. The Rain in Spain, director Janet Goddard says to a huge adolescent boy so plump and pale and vacant he looks like a snowman. I need you to say The Rain in Spain without having your head under your arm. Pretend it's a game, she says. It's true that the evening before Julie Smith's brother will beat Julie Smith on her 741st Jeopardy slot, Fay tells Julie about what Merv Griffin's man and the director have done. The two women stand clothed at Fay's glass wall and watch distant mountains become Hershey kisses in an expanding system of shadow. Fay tells Julie that it's because the folks over at MGE have such respect and admiration for Julie that they want to exercise careful control over the choice of who replaces her. That, to MGE, Julie is the mystery of the game show incarnate, and that the staff is understandably willing to do pretty much anything at all in the hopes of hanging on to that power of mystery and incarnation through the inevitability of change, loss. Then she says that was all just the shiny executive's bullshit, what she just said. Julie asks Fay why Fay has not told her before, now, what is going to happen. Fay asks Julie why Julie sends all her sheltered winnings to her brother's doctors, but will not talk to her brother. Julie isn't the one who cries. Julie asks whether there will be animal questions tomorrow. There will be lots and lots of animal questions tomorrow. The director has personally compiled tomorrow's categories and answers. Fay's been temporarily assigned to help the key grip try to repair a defectively lit E in the set's giant Jeopardy logo. Fay asks why Julie likes to make up pretend reasons for being a lesbian. She thinks Julie is really a lesbian because she hates animals, somehow. Fay says she does not understand this. She cries at the glass wall. Julie lays her hands flat on the clean glass. Fay asks Julie whether Julie's brother can beat her. Julie says that there is no way her brother can beat her, and that deep down in the silence of himself, her brother knows it. Julie says that she will always know every fact her brother knows, plus one. Through the window of the makeup room, Fay can see a gray paste of clouds moving back over the sun. There are tiny flecks of rain on the little window. Fay tells the makeup lady she'll take over. Julie's in the makeup chair, in a spring blouse and faded cotton skirt and sandals. Her legs are crossed, her hair spiked with mousse. Her eyes, calm and bright and not at all bored, are fixed on a point just below her own chin in the lit mirror. A very small, kind smile for Fay. You're late, I love you. Fay whispers. She applies base. Here's one, Julie says. Fay blends the border of the base into the soft hollows under Julie's jaw. Here's one, says Julie. To hold in reserve, for when you're really on the spot. They'll eat it up. You're not going to get bumped. He's too terrified to stand up, even. I had to step over him on the way down here. Julie shakes her head. Tell them you were 8. Your brother was silent in 5. Tell them your mother's face hung tired from her head. That first, men, and then she herself made her ugly. That her face just hung there with love for a blank, silent man who left you, touching wood forever by the side of the road. Tell them how you were left by your mother by a field of dry grass. Tell them the field and the sky and the highway were the color of old laundry. Tell them you touched a post all day, your hand and a broken baby's bright white hand, waiting for what had always come back. Every single time, before. Fay applies powder. Tell them there was a cow. Julie swallows. It was in the field, near where you held the fence. Tell them the cow stood there all day, chewing at something it had swallowed long ago, and looking at you. Tell them how the cow's face had no expression on it, how it stood there all day, looking at you with a big face that had no expression. Julie breathes. How it almost made you need to scream. The wind sounds like screams. Stand there touching wood all day, with a baby who is silence embodied, who can, stand there forever, waiting for the only car it knows. And not once have to understand. A cow watches you, standing, the same way it watches anything. A towelette takes the excess powder. Julie blots her lipstick on the blotter Fay holds out. Tell them that, even now, you cannot stand animals, because animals' faces have no expression, not even the possibility of it. Tell them to look, really to look, into the face of an animal, sometime. Fay runs a gentle pick through Julie's moist, spiked hair. Julie looks at Fay in the mirror, bordered with bulbs. Then, tell them to look closely at men's faces. Tell them to stand perfectly still for time and to look into the face of a man. A man's face has nothing on it. Look closely. Tell them to look, and not at what the faces do. Men's faces never stop moving. They're like antennae. But all the faces do is move through different configurations of blankness. Fay looks for Julie's eyes in the mirror. Julie says, tell them there are no holes for your fingers in the masks of men. Tell them, how could you ever even hope to love what you can't grab onto? Julie turns her makeup chair and looks up at Fay. That's when I love you, if I love you, she whispers, running a finger down her white, powdered cheek. Reaching to trace an angled line of white onto Fay's own face is when your face moves into expression. Try to look out from yourself, different all the time. Tell people that you know your face is least pretty at rest. She keeps her fingers on Fay's face. Fay closes her eyes against tears. When she opens them, Julie is still looking at her. She's smiling a wonderful smile, way past 20. She takes Fay's hands. You asked me once how poems informed me, she says, almost a whisper, her microphone voice. And you asked whether we, us, depended on the game to even be, baby. Lifting Fay's face with one finger under the chin. Remember the ocean, our dawn ocean that we loved? We loved it because it was like us, Fay. The ocean was obvious. We were looking at something obvious the whole time. She pinches a nipple. Too softly for Fay even to feel. Oceans are only oceans when they move, Julie whispers. Waves are what keep oceans from just being very big puddles. Oceans are just their waves. And every wave in the ocean is finally going to meet what it moves toward and break. The whole thing we looked at, the whole time you asked, was obvious. It was obvious in a poem because it was us. See things like that, Fay, your own face, moving into expression, a wave, breaking on a rock, giving up its shape in a gesture that expresses that shape. See? It wasn't at the beach that Fay had asked about the future. It was in Los Angeles. And what about the anomalous wave that came out of nowhere and broke on itself? Julie is looking at Fay. See? Fay's eyes are open. They get wide. You don't like my face at rest? The set is powder blue. The giant Jeopardy logo is lowered. Its E flickers, a palsied fluorescent flicker. Julie turns her head from the sick letter. Alex has a flower in his lapel. The three contestants' names appear in projected cursive before their desks. Alex blows Julie the traditional kiss. Pat Sajak gives Fay a thumbs up from stage opposite. He gestures. Fay looks around the curtain and sees a banana peel on the pale blue carpet, carefully placed in the tape-marked path Alex takes every day from his lectern to the board full of answers. Dee Goddard and Muffy DeMont and Merv Griffin's shiny man hunch over monitors in the director's booth. Janet Goddard arranges a shot of a pale, round boy who dwarfs his little desk. The third contestant, in the middle, feels at his makeup a little. Fay smells powder. She watches Sajak rub his hands together. The red lights light. Alex raises his arms in greeting. There is no digital watch on his wrist. The director, in her booth, with her headset, says something to camera 2. Julie and the audience look at each other.